Alien warrior considered humans delicate until she saw him self-regenerate and was shocked. The acrid stench of plasma discharge filled the air as Lieutenant Marcus Fallon crouched behind a twisted piece of metal that had once been part of the defense perimeter. His combat armor, a masterpiece of human engineering, painted in deep navy with silver accents, bore fresh scorch marks from near misses. Sweat trickled down his temples, dampening his thick brown hair and beard as he checked his weapon's charge. "You humans really are peculiar creatures," came a melodious voice from his left, "taking cover like frightened prey when we should be pressing the attack." Marcus glanced over at his newly assigned battle partner, Lieutenant Nytha Val'shara of the Emerald Blade Alliance. Her bright green skin seemed to shimmer under the binary star's light, and her flowing black hair whipped in the hot wind. The white-silver organic armor she wore hugged her athletic form, its deep neckline a stark contrast to the practical design of human combat gear. "Being cautious isn't the same as being afraid," Marcus replied with a grin, "though I suppose that's hard to understand for someone who thinks charging headlong into enemy fire is a solid tactical choice." Nytha's laughter rang out over the battlefield. "Oh, you're amusing, human. I've heard tales of your species' fragility. It's almost endearing how you try to compensate with your little jokes and clever tactics." Before Marcus could retort, their combat neural net lit up with urgent war warnings. Multiple hostile signatures were converging on their position, remnants of the dark swarm forces that had been harassing Alliance outposts in this sector. "Time to show you how we fragile humans get things done," Marcus said, checking his combat scanner. 3 hostiles moving in from the northwest, heavy weapons by the look of their signatures. "Finally," Nytha exclaimed, her organic armor shifting and forming additional protective plates. "Let's see if you can keep up, soft skin." Marcus rolled his eyes but couldn't suppress a smile. "Just try not to get yourself killed. The paperwork would be hell." They moved in perfect synchronization despite their banter. Marcus provided covering fire while Nytha advanced, her energy blade humming with lethal potential. The first 2 Dark Swarm troops fell quickly to their coordinated assault, but the third one proved more troublesome. Marcus spotted the threat first, a concealed heavy gunner with a charged plasma cannon. Nytha, caught up in the thrill of combat, hadn't noticed the danger. The massive weapon began to glow with deadly energy, aimed directly at her exposed flank. Without hesitation, Marcus launched himself forward. "Down!" he shouted, tackling Nytha just as the plasma burst tore through the space where she'd been standing. The searing energy caught him across his chest, burning through his armor and into his flesh. They hit the ground hard, Marcus using his body to shield Nytha from both the impact and the plasma discharge. Through the pain, he managed to draw his sidearm and put 3 precise shots into the gunner's position, ending the threat. "By the first star!" Nytha exclaimed, quickly rolling them both behind cover. "You fool! Why would you—" She stopped short when she saw the extent of his injuries. The plasma had burnt through his armor, leaving a ghastly wound across his chest. "Medic!" Nytha shouted into her comm, her voice tinged with genuine concern. "We need immediate evacuation. Human officer down with severe plasma burns." Marcus coughed, managing a weak smile despite the pain. "Still think we're fragile?" "Shut up and save your strength," she snapped, applying emergency sealant to the wound. "Only a human would be stupid enough to jump in front of plasma fire." The medical transport arrived within minutes, its anti-grav engines howling as it descended through the dusty atmosphere. The medical team, a mix of human and alien personnel, quickly loaded Marcus onto a stretcher. "I'm coming with you," Nytha declared, her tone brooking no argument. The medics knew better than to protest. During the short flight to the Alliance Medical Center, Nytha watched as the human medical officer checked Marcus's vitals. The wounded lieutenant had lost consciousness, but his readings remained surprisingly stable. "How bad is it?" she asked, trying to keep the worry from her voice. The medic glanced at her scanner. Third-degree plasma burns across 20% of his chest. He'll need immediate treatment, but... She frowned at her readings. That's odd. What is? His tissue is already showing signs of preliminary regeneration. Most species would still be in shock, but his body's already fighting back. The medical centre was a marvel of alliance engineering, a gleaming structure of white and chrome that stretched toward the purple sky. Inside, the emergency ward hummed with activity as doctors and nurses of various species moved with practiced efficiency. "I'm sorry, Lieutenant Val'shara," the head physician, a tall Andromedan, informed her after examining Marcus. "We're experiencing a critical shortage of regenerative gel. The next supply shipment won't arrive for 3 days." Nia's heart sank. But without it. "We'll do what we can with conventional treatments," the physician assured her. "He'll be closely monitored for 3 days." Nia found herself returning to the medical ward between duties. She told herself it was just professional courtesy, checking on a fallen comrade. But something about the human selfless act had shaken her preconceptions. On the 3rd day, she arrived to find Marcus's bed surrounded by fascinated medical staff. "Impossible," one of the doctors was muttering, studying a holographic display of Marcus's wound. "The tissue regeneration rate is off the charts." Nia pushed her way forward and stared in amazement. The horrific burn that had covered Marcus's chest was now significantly smaller. New pink skin already forming around the edges. "How?" she demanded. A human nurse smiled knowingly. "It's just what we do. Human bodies are remarkably resilient. We evolve with an extraordinary capacity for healing. Sure, we might not have natural armor or enhanced strength like some species, but we're really good at bouncing back." As if on cue, Marcus stirred on the bed, his eyes fluttering open, immediately finding Nia's stunned face. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, his voice rough but strong. I thought you were..." Nia struggled to find the words. "They said without the regenerative gel." Marcus chuckled, then winced. "Takes more than a plasma burn to keep a human down, though I wouldn't recommend it as a regular hobby." Looking at him now, wounded but healing, joking in the face of what should have been a devastating injury, Nia felt her entire worldview shift. These humans weren't fragile at all. They were something else entirely. The Alliance Medical Centre's training facility wasn't designed for romance, but watching Marcus Fallon execute a perfect combat role despite his healing chest wound made Nia's heart skip a beat. 2 weeks had passed since the plasma blast incident, and her human partner's recovery continued to defy her expectations. "You're staring again, Lieutenant Val'shara," Marcus called out with a roguish grin, his muscled form moving with fluid grace through the combat course. Sweat glistened on his bare chest, the fresh pink scar tissue a testament to his species' remarkable healing abilities. "Just ensuring my battle partner doesn't rupture something vital," Nia replied, trying to maintain her professional demeanour despite the warmth creeping into her cheeks. "Though I must admit, your recovery rate is impressive." Marcus approached, grabbing a towel to wipe his face. "You know what's really impressive? How you suddenly became so interested in human physiology. The medical staff tells me you've been researching our biological capabilities extensively." "Know your allies," she said, unconsciously running a hand through her long black hair. "Though I'm beginning to think everything I thought I knew about humans was wrong." "Oh," Marcus raised an eyebrow, stepping closer. "And what else would you like to know?" The air between them crackled with unspoken tension. Nia's organic armor, responsive to her emotional state, shifted subtly, its patterns flowing like liquid silver. "Perhaps," she said, her voice dropping to a lower register, "we should continue this discussion over dinner. Purely for research purposes, of course." "Of course," Marcus agreed, his brown eyes twinkling. "Though I should warn you, humans can be quite passionate about sharing our culture." Their flirtatious exchange was interrupted by the facility's emergency alert system. Red lights pulsed as Admiral Manson's holographic form materialized before them. "Lieutenant Fallon, Lieutenant Val'shara," the Admiral's stern voice cut through the moment. "We have a situation. The Dark Swarm forces you encountered 2 weeks ago. They weren't isolated raiders. We've detected a major fleet movement near the Arcturus sector." Marcus immediately shifted into combat mode, his playful demeanour replaced by focused intensity. "How bad is it, sir?" "Bad enough that I'm asking a recovering officer to join the response team," Manson replied grimly. "The Dark Swarm are using some kind of new biological weapon. We need your unique abilities, Fallon." Nytha stepped forward, her protective instincts flaring. "Admiral, Lieutenant Fallon is still healing." "I'm in," Marcus interrupted, catching Nytha's eye. "My tissue regeneration is at 85%. That's more than enough." The Admiral nodded. "Briefing in 30 minutes. And Lieutenant Val'shara, keep him alive out there. That's an order." After the hologram faded, Nytha turned to Marcus, concern evident in her expression. "You don't have to prove anything, you know. Not to me. Not anymore." Marcus reached out, his fingers brushing her arm where the organic armor didn't cover. The touch sent electricity through both of them. "I'm not trying to prove anything, but if this biological weapon is what I think it is, my natural healing abilities might be our best defense against it." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Nytha's hand found his, their fingers intertwining. "Then we face it together. But first, you need to finish recovering." "I thought you'd given up on treating me like I'm delicate," Marcus teased, though his voice was husky with emotion. "On the contrary," Nytha murmured, stepping closer. "I'm beginning to understand that humans are anything but delicate. You're extraordinary." The training facility's automatic lighting began to dim for the evening cycle, casting them in soft shadows. Marcus's hand moved to cup Nytha's face, his thumb tracing the elegant line of her cheekbone. Her skin was warm beneath his touch, its slight texture fascinating. "Nytha," he breathed, "I should warn you, human relationships can be intense. We feel things deeply." She leaned into his touch, her organic armor rippling with iridescent patterns that reflected her emotional state. Nytha thought, "Show me." Their first kiss was like a supernova, explosive, world-changing, inevitable. A different species they might be, but in that moment, such distinction seemed meaningless. Nytha's arms wound around Marcus's neck as he pulled her closer, their bodies fitting together as if designed for each other. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Nytha's eyes were wide with wonder. "That was another fascinating aspect of human physiology," Marcus suggested with a smile. "I believe I need to conduct more research," she replied, her fingers tracing the healing scar on his chest. "Thoroughly, extensively." "I volunteer as your test subject," Marcus murmured, capturing her lips again. The facility's comm system chimed, reminding them of the impending briefing. Reality crashed back in, but something had fundamentally changed between them. As they prepared to face whatever threat the Dark Swarm presented, they knew they would face it together, not just as battle partners, but as something more. Later that night, in Nytha's quarters, they explored their connection further, discovering that physical differences meant nothing when hearts beat in harmony. Their passion was tender, yet fierce, a dance of discovery that transcended species barriers and cultural differences. As they lay together afterward, Nytha traced patterns on Marcus's chest, marvelling at how his skin seemed to glow in the starlight streaming through her viewport. "Your healing abilities aren't the only remarkable thing about humans," she mused. "Oh." Marcus pulled her closer, kissing her forehead. "Your capacity for love," she explained. "It's as powerful as your regenerative abilities, perhaps even more so." Before Marcus could respond, their comms buzzed simultaneously. The Dark Swarm threat couldn't wait. but they had found something worth fighting for, something worth protecting. As they dressed for battle, their movements synchronized, and they both knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them stronger together. The human who had seemed so fragile at first had proven to be anything but, and in doing so had captured not just Nytha's admiration, but her heart. The Alliance battleship Intrepid's observation deck offered a breathtaking view of the binary star system, but Lieutenant Marcus Fallon found his attention drawn instead to Lieutenant Nytha Val'shara's reflection in the transparent Dural viewport. Her organic armour shimmered with subtle patterns that he had learned to read like poetry, right now expressing a mix of contemplation and contentment. "Credit for your thoughts?" he asked, moving to stand beside her. His chest wound had healed remarkably, leaving only a faint silver scar that Nytha often traced with fascination. "I was just thinking about how much has changed," she replied, turning to face him. "A month ago, I thought humans were—" She paused, searching for the right word. "Fragile? Weak? Delicate?" Marcus supplied with a knowing smirk. "I seem to recall several creative terms you used to describe us as soft-skinned humans." Nytha's green skin darkened slightly, her species equivalent of a blush. "And now I know better. Your kind continues to amaze me, Marcus. Just when I think I understand humans, you reveal new depths." Their conversation was interrupted by the ship's artificial gravity briefly fluctuating, a common occurrence as they navigated the complex gravitational fields of the binary system. Marcus instinctively reached out to steady Nytha, though they both knew she needed no such assistance. The touch lingered, electric and meaningful. "Speaking of depths," Marcus said, his voice dropping to an intimate register, "I believe we were discussing cultural exchange over dinner tonight, unless you're too busy with mission reports." Nytha's armour rippled playfully. "Actually, I've been researching human courtship rituals. Fascinating stuff. Did you know your species is one of the few that kisses?" "We're also one of the few species that cooks their food," Marcus replied with a grin. "Which is why I managed to convince Chef Rodriguez to prepare something special tonight. Even got permission to use his private kitchen." "You're going to cook for me?" Nytha's eyes widened with interest. "Another hidden talent?" "Let's just say human males have many surprising capabilities," Marcus winked, "though I should warn you, Earth cuisine can be quite stimulating." Their flirtatious banter was interrupted by Commander THX's gravelly voice over the ship's comm. "Lieutenant Fallon, Lieutenant Val'shara, report to the combat simulation chamber. Time to test those new joint combat protocols." They shared a knowing look. Duty called, but anticipation for the evening ahead charged the air between them, and the combat simulation chamber awaited. Was a massive space that could recreate any battlefield scenario through advanced holographic technology. Today, it was configured as an urban combat environment with towering structures and narrow alleyways. "The objective is simple," Commander Thax announced from the observation booth. "Clear the sector of hostiles while protecting civilian targets. But here's the twist. You'll be using live weapons with safety limiters, and your armour systems will be operating at minimum capacity." Nytha's armour shifted into combat configuration, though noticeably lighter than usual. "Testing our natural capabilities, Commander." "Precisely," Thax replied. "Recent encounters have shown we rely too heavily on advanced tech. Sometimes basic instincts and natural abilities make the difference between victory and defeat." Marcus checked his weapon, a familiar weight in his hands. "Ready when you are, partner." The simulation began, and they moved through the urban landscape with practiced efficiency. Months of working together had forged them into a seamless unit, each anticipating the other's moves. What neither expected was how their newfound intimacy enhanced their combat synchronization. Every gesture, every unspoken signal carried deeper meaning. When Marcus rolled behind cover, Nytha was already providing suppressing fire. When she advanced, he instinctively knew which angle to protect. "Your left," Marcus called out, diving forward as a holographic enemy appeared in Nea's blind spot. His warning came just as she spun, her blade finding its mark while his shots eliminated 2 more targets. "Show off," she teased, but her armor patterns pulsed with admiration. The simulation escalated, throwing increasingly complex scenarios at them. With their armor systems limited, they had to rely more on natural abilities. Marcus's quick healing coming into play when a glancing shot caught his arm, and Nea's inherent strength allowing her to clear obstacles that would have stymied others. After an intense hour, the simulation ended. They stood in the center of the chamber, breathing hard but triumphant. The holographic environment faded, leaving them alone in the vast space. "Impressive performance," Commander Thax's voice echoed, "though your tactics were unconventional." "Humans excel at unconventional solutions," Marcus replied, sharing a private smile with Nia. "Indeed," Thax said dryly. "Dismissed, and Lieutenant Fallon, try not to break any more training records. The paperwork is becoming excessive." Later, in Marcus's quarters, turned temporary kitchen, the air was filled with the aroma of earth spices. Nia watched with fascination as he moved confidently through the cooking process, his movements as precise as they were in combat. "You're staring again," he noted without turning around. "I'm observing," she corrected. "There's something captivating about watching you work. The focus, the precision. It's like watching you in combat, but more intimate." Marcus turned, holding a spoon with some kind of sauce. "Try this," he offered. Nia leaned forward, letting him feed her the sample. The flavors exploded across her tongue, sweet, spicy, complex. Her armor rippled with pleasure. "That's incredible," she breathed. "How do you make it so intense?" Marcus suggested, moving closer. "Humans have a gift for sensation. We feel everything deeply: pain, pleasure, taste, touch." His fingers brushed her arm, sending shivers through her armor. "It's part of who we are." Their eyes met, and the air between them charged with possibility. Nia's armor responded to her elevated heart rate, shifting into patterns that reflected her emotional state. "Show me more," she whispered, pulling him closer. The dinner would have to wait. Hours later, they lay tangled together, Nia's armor having reconfigured itself into something more comfortable. She traced the scar on Marcus's chest, marveling at how the tissue had knit itself together. "Your healing ability still amazes me," she murmured. "But it's not just physical, is it? Humans heal emotionally too, adapt to new situations, forge connections that should be impossible." Marcus caught her hand, bringing it to his lips. "We're stubborn that way, when we find something worth fighting for, worth healing for." He left the sentence hanging meaningfully. A chime from their comms interrupted the moment, duty calling again. But as they prepared to face whatever new challenge awaited, both knew they'd discovered something rare and precious. A connection that transcended species, a partnership forged in battle and tempered by understanding. The Emerald Blade ceremonial hall aboard the Intrepid buzzed with anticipation. Lieutenant Marcus Fallon stood at attention, feeling slightly out of place in his dress uniform among the gathered Emerald Blade warriors, their organic armor shifting in mesmerizing patterns of celebration. The occasion was the rite of seasonal renewal, a crucial cultural ceremony for Nia's people. Marcus watched as his partner moved through the traditional forms, her armor flowing like liquid starlight, telling ancient stories through its changing patterns. He'd never seen her look more beautiful, more fierce, more alien. "Your mate performs the sacred forms well," a deep voice commented beside him. Marcus turned to find High Warrior Ka, his massive frame adorned with battle-scarred armor that pulsed with authority. "Partner," Marcus corrected automatically, then caught himself. I mean, yes, she's extraordinary. Ka's armour rippled with what Marcus had learned to recognise as amusement. You humans, and your careful distinctions. Among our people, there is no difference between battle partner and life mate. Both are sacred bonds. Marcus's mind flashed to the previous night when Nytha had tried to explain this very concept. Their cultural differences had led to their first real argument, not about their feelings, but about how to define them. In human culture, Marcus explained carefully, we tend to separate our professional and personal relationships. Ah yes, your famous compartmentalization, Kay nodded sagely. Another aspect of your species' remarkable adaptability. You divide yourselves to heal better, like your cellular regeneration. Before Marcus could respond, the ceremony reached its crescendo. Nytha's armour blazed with internal light as she completed the final form, a movement that symbolized rebirth and renewal. The assembled warriors erupted in appreciative trills, their armour patterns synchronizing in celebration. Nytha made her way through the crowd toward Marcus, her face flushed with exertion and joy. Without hesitation, she pulled him into a warrior's embrace, forehead to forehead, armour to uniform, public and intimate in a way that made Marcus simultaneously thrilled and uncomfortable. You're projecting discomfort, she whispered against his skin. Your heart rate is elevated. Cultural differences, he murmured back. Humans usually keep public displays of affection more subtle. Nytha pulled back slightly, her armour shifting to reflect confusion. But you've never shown such restraint in private. Why should the presence of others change what we are to each other? It was a fair question, and one that highlighted their fundamental cultural divide. Humans compartmentalized, as Ka had noted. Emerald Blade warriors lived their truth openly, seeing no distinction between battlefield solidarity and personal intimacy. Perhaps sensing the tension, High Warrior Ka interrupted their quiet exchange. You both need to experience the rite of understanding. It is traditionally reserved for Emerald Blade warriors, but given your unique partnership. Nytha's armour pulsed with excitement. Yes, Marcus, it's perfect. The rite would help bridge our cultural gap. What exactly does this rite entail? Marcus asked, both curious and cautious. It is a sharing of perspectives, Ka explained. Through our bioresonance technology, you would experience each other's cultural memories and instincts. It is how we maintain unity despite our warrior nature. Marcus considered the implications. The idea of such intimate mental contact was both thrilling and terrifying, very much like falling in love with Nytha had been. I'll do it, he decided. After all, humans were nothing if not adaptable. The rite chamber was small and circular, its walls lined with bioorganic interfaces that pulsed with soft light. Marcus and Nytha sat cross-legged facing each other while High Warrior Ka made the necessary preparations. Remember, Ka instructed, the connection will be gradual. You'll first share surface thoughts, then deeper cultural memories. The experience can be intense. Nytha reached out, taking Marcus's hands in hers. Her armour retracted from her palms, allowing skin-to-skin contact. Trust me, she whispered. The bioresonance field activated and Marcus gasped as the first wave of alien perspective washed over him. He experienced Nytha's first battle, felt the pride of earning her armour, understood suddenly why her people saw no distinction between different types of partnership. In turn, Nytha's eyes widened as she experienced human memories, the complexity of social relationships, the deep-seated need for private spaces and public faces, the intense emotions that humans carefully manage. Your species feels everything so strongly, she breathed, overwhelmed by the depth of human emotional capacity. How do you contain it all? We don't, really, Marcus replied, his voice thick with shared emotion. We just process it differently, channel it. The connection deepened and cultural understanding flowed both ways. Marcus felt the warrior bond philosophy that shaped Emerald Blade society, the belief that all forms of partnership were expressions of the same fundamental connection. Anea experienced the human need for boundaries, not as limitation, but as a form of respect. Their shared consciousness expanded, touching deeper memories. Marcus felt Nytha's initial dismissal of human fragility transform into awe as she relived discovering his regenerative abilities. Nytha experienced Marcus's pride in human resilience, his joy in proving her preconceptions wrong. When the rite ended, they remained connected for several moments, foreheads touching, breathing synchronized. The cultural gap between them hadn't disappeared, but it had become a bridge rather than a barrier. "I understand now," Nytha said softly, her armor patterns reflecting the complexity of her emotions. "Your compartmentalization isn't about hiding or denying connections. It's about protecting them, nurturing them in their proper spaces." Marcus smiled, reaching up to trace the line of her jaw. "And I understand why you see no need for such divisions. Your people live truth in all moments: battle, love, celebration." "Perhaps," High Warrior Ka suggested, "you can find strength in both approaches. The human ability to adapt, combined with our warrior bond philosophy, could make us stronger together than either culture alone." "Nea," Marcus finished, her armor shifting to display patterns that combined human and emerald blade motifs. Later, in their private quarters, Marcus and Nytha explored their new understanding in more intimate ways. Their cultural differences hadn't vanished, but they learned to see them as complementary rather than contradictory. "Your heart rate is elevated again," Nytha teased, her armor responding to their shared desire. "Some things transcend cultural differences," Marcus replied, pulling her closer. Their laughter, like their love, needed no translation. The mission briefing room aboard the Intrepid hummed with tension. Lieutenant Marcus Fallon studied the holographic display showing their target, a massive dark swarm hive ship drifting in the Vega Nebula's outer reaches. Its biomechanical hull pulsed with an ominous red glow, a stark contrast to the surrounding purple gases. "Intelligence suggests they're developing a new type of neural weapon," Admiral Manson explained, his weathered face grave, "one that specifically targets the connection between organic armor and its wearer." Nytha's armor rippled with concern, its patterns reflecting her unease. Marcus felt her tension through their newly strengthened bond, a result of the rite of understanding they'd shared. "Our mission is infiltration and data retrieval," Manson continued. "Lieutenant Val'shara, you'll need to operate without your armor's advanced functions. Lieutenant Fallon, your natural regenerative abilities make you ideal for this operation." "But," Marcus prompted, noting the Admiral's hesitation, "the neural weapon's effects on human physiology are unknown. Your healing factor could be an advantage, or a liability." The implications hung heavy in the air. Nytha's armor shifted protectively, almost unconsciously reaching toward Marcus. After the rite, their cultural approaches to partnership had begun to merge, but this mission would test their ability to balance both ways of thinking. "Time frame?" Marcus asked, maintaining professional distance despite Nytha's obvious concern. In their quarters, Nytha paced while Marcus checked his gear. Her armor had retracted to its most basic form, a precaution against the neural weapon. "This is wrong," she declared suddenly. "The Emerald Blade way would be to face them directly, not this human stealth approach." Marcus paused in his preparations. "Sometimes direct confrontation isn't the answer, love." "You don't understand," Nea's voice carried an edge of frustration. "After the rite, after everything we've shared, how can you still think like this? We should face this threat together, openly." "We will be together," Marcus assured her, moving to cup her face in his hands. "Just not in the way you're used to." Their eyes met, and the cultural divide they'd thought bridged yawned between them again. Nia's warrior culture valued direct action, visible unity, while human tactical doctrine emphasized adaptation and discretion. "I can't lose you," Nytha whispered, her armor pulsing with emotion, "not to some coward's weapon in the dark." Marcus smiled softly. "Remember what you learned about humans during the rite. We're not as fragile as we seem." Their kiss was fierce, desperate, a clash of cultural approaches seeking harmony. Nytha's partially retracted armor responded to her passion, creating patterns that matched Marcus's heartbeat. "Show me again," she breathed against his lips. "Show me that human strength that keeps surprising me." Hours later, as they lay tangled in each other's arms, Nytha traced the scar on Marcus's chest, a constant reminder of human resilience. "You're healing," she mused. "It's not just physical, is it? It's in everything you do. The way you adapt, the way you love." "And your warrior spirit isn't just about combat," Marcus replied, running his fingers through her dark hair. "It's about facing everything with complete commitment, complete truth." The ship's alert system chimed, marking their deployment time. As they dressed, their movements were synchronized despite their philosophical differences. The dark swarm hive ship loomed before them, its biomechanical surface writhing like something from a nightmare. Their stealth shuttle approached silently, using the nebula's radiation to mask their signature. "Remember," Marcus whispered as they prepared to board, "we're stronger because of our differences, not in spite of them." Nytha's stripped-down armor gleamed dully in the nebula's light. "Just promise me one thing," she said, her voice tight with emotion. "Promise me you won't try to be unnecessarily heroic. Your regeneration isn't invincibility." "Now who's worried about fragility?" Marcus teased, but his eyes were serious. "I promise to be careful if you promise to trust the human way of doing things, just this once." Their boarding was silent, efficient. The hive ship's corridors pulsed with bioluminescence, casting everything in a sickly red glow. They moved like shadows, their different approaches to combat creating a perfect synthesis of stealth and strength. The first sign of trouble came when they reached the central data core. The neural weapon's effects were immediately apparent, waves of energy that made Nytha's armor writhe in protest. "Marcus," she gasped, her armor struggling to maintain cohesion. "Something's wrong. The weapon, it's not just affecting the armor, it's affecting the bond between warrior and armor." Marcus's regenerative abilities were already working overtime, fighting off the weapon's influence on his own nervous system. "Can you maintain basic protection?" "Barely," she gritted out. "But I can't fight like this. We should retreat, regroup." "No time," he interrupted, noting the increasing security presence on his scanner. "We need that data. Trust me." Their eyes met in the red-tinged darkness. Cultural differences fell away, leaving only their core truth, their trust in each other. "Always," Nytha answered. What followed was a dance of contrast. Marcus moved with human adaptability, using the environment and his natural abilities to gather the data while protecting Nytha. She provided what coverage she could with her limited armor function, her warrior spirit undiminished despite her technological handicap. When the alarm finally sounded, they were already heading for extraction. The neural weapon's effects grew stronger, making Nytha stumble as her armor fought to maintain integrity. "Leave me," she gasped. "Complete the mission." "Not a chance," Marcus cut her off, supporting her weight. "Humans don't leave their partners behind." "Neither do Emerald Blade warriors," she replied, managing a weak laugh. "Stubborn human," she teased. "Proud warrior," he countered, helping her toward their extraction point. They made it back to their shuttle just as the hive ship's defenses fully activated. As they broke free of the massive vessel's gravity well, Nytha's armor finally stabilized. "That," she said, still breathing hard, "was not the Emerald Blade way." "No," Marcus agreed, pulling her close. "It was our way." In their quarters later, after the mission debrief, they found a new appreciation for their cultural blend. Nia's armour had fully recovered, once again reflecting her emotions in shifting patterns of light as they celebrated their survival in intimate ways. "Perhaps," she murmured against Marcus's skin, "there is wisdom in both approaches, the warrior's heart and the human's adaptability." "Together," Marcus agreed, pulling her closer, "we make something entirely new." The Alliance Strategic Command Centre buzzed with activity as Lieutenant Marcus Fallon and Lieutenant Nytha Val'shara presented their mission findings. The amphitheatre-style chamber held representatives from every major species in the Alliance, their attention fixed on the holographic display showing combat footage from the Dark Swarm hive ship operation. "As you can see," Marcus explained, his confident voice carrying through the chamber, "the combination of human adaptability and Emerald Blade warrior techniques allowed us to complete the mission with minimal confrontation." Nia's armour shifted in elegant patterns as she added, "Our success demonstrates the potential of integrating different cultural approaches to combat." Admiral Manson nodded approvingly, but several other commanders showed clear scepticism. Commander Rax, a veteran of the Old Guard, rose from his seat. "This blended approach goes against centuries of established doctrine," he growled. "The Emerald Blade warriors have their way, humans have theirs. Mixing them only creates confusion." "With respect, Commander," Marcus countered, unconsciously touching the scar on his chest, "our recent mission proves otherwise. The neural weapon would have defeated either approach alone. Only by combining our strengths did we succeed." The debate continued, growing heated at times. Throughout it all, Marcus felt Nia's presence, through their strength and bond, her armour occasionally brushing against him in subtle support. Later, in the privacy of the officers' lounge, they found a moment of respite. The space station's massive viewport offered a spectacular view of the nearby nebula, its swirling colours matching the patterns playing across Nytha's armour. "They fear change," she observed, running her fingers along Marcus's arm, "even after everything we've shown them." "Fear of change is universal," Marcus replied, pulling her closer. "But so is adaptation. Humans learned that lesson early in our evolution." "Speaking of evolution," Nia's armour rippled playfully, "I've been studying more human biology. Your regenerative capabilities continue to fascinate me." "Oh." Marcus raised an eyebrow, his voice dropping to an intimate register. "Any particular aspects catch your interest?" Before she could respond, they were interrupted by High Warrior K's arrival. The massive warrior's armour displayed formal patterns, indicating official business. "The Council requests your presence," he announced. "They wish to discuss implementing your tactical innovations on a broader scale." The Council chamber was smaller than the Strategic Command Centre, but no less impressive. 12 of the Alliance's highest-ranking officers sat in a semicircle, their diverse forms representing the unity and challenges of their coalition. "We've reviewed your mission data," First Speaker Thelen began, her crystalline form refracting light across the chamber. "Your success is undeniable, but implementing these changes across the Alliance military structure presents unique challenges." "Cultural integration always does," Marcus acknowledged, "but the benefits outweigh the difficulties." "Show us," another council member demanded. "Demonstrate this blend of approaches in controlled conditions." The training arena was massive, designed to accommodate various species and combat styles. Marcus and Nytha stood at its centre, surrounded by senior officers and combat instructors. "Begin simulation," the computer announced. Multiple hostiles, varying attack patterns. What followed was a dance of perfect synchronization. Marcus moved with human fluidity, each motion efficient and adaptable. Nea's warrior spirit shone through her stripped-down armour, their styles complementing each other flawlessly. When the simulation ended, even the skeptics looked impressed. High Warrior K's armour displayed patterns of approval. "The human regenerative abilities," he noted, They don't just heal wounds, they allow for tactical risks that would deter others. Combined with our warrior philosophy, it creates something entirely new. Nytha, she finished, her armour pulsing with pride. The council deliberated for hours. Finally, first speaker Fallon announced their decision. Marcus and Nia would develop a training program to teach their blended approach to selected alliance teams. In their quarters that evening, celebration turned to passion. Nytha's armour responded to her emotions, creating patterns that matched their shared heartbeat. "You continue to amaze me," she murmured, tracing the scar that had first shown her human resilience. "Every time they doubt you, you prove them wrong." Marcus pulled her closer, reveling in the way her armour adapted to his touch. "We proved them wrong together. Your warrior spirit gives my adaptability purpose." Their intimacy had evolved alongside their combat partnership, each cultural approach enriching the other. Where once they'd seen differences, they now found harmony. The next morning brought their first training session. 20 pairs of warriors, one human, one emerald blade each, gathered in the arena, eager to learn. "The key," Marcus explained, "is understanding that different approaches aren't weaknesses, they're opportunities." Nia demonstrated, her armour shifting through combat forms, while Marcus showed how human adaptability could complement each movement. "Watch closely," she instructed. "See how human regenerative abilities allow for tactical choices we'd normally consider too risky. This isn't about changing who we are, it's about becoming more." Throughout the day, they guided their students through exercises that challenged cultural assumptions. Some pairs struggled, others showed promise. But all began to understand the potential of their blended approach. During a break, Admiral Manson visited to observe their progress. "Impressive," he commented, watching a human emerald blade pair execute a perfect combination maneuver. "Though not everyone is convinced." "They don't need to be," Marcus replied, sharing a knowing look with Nia. "They just need to see the results." That evening, exhausted but satisfied, they retired to their quarters. Nytha's armour shifted into its most relaxed configuration as she curled against Marcus. "Remember when you thought humans were fragile?" he teased, running his fingers through her hair. "Remember when you thought warrior culture was inflexible?" she countered, her armour creating patterns of affection across her skin. Their laughter turned to tender kisses, cultural differences forgotten in the universal language of love. They had created something new together, in combat, in training, in life. As they lay together afterward, Nia traced the patterns of Marcus's scars, marvelling at how human healing had changed her understanding of strength. "We're changing the alliance," she mused, "one pair of warriors at a time." "Change is what humans do best," Marcus replied, pulling her closer, "and warriors adapt to win." Their bond, once thought impossible, had become a blueprint for evolution. In their shared warmth, they found not just love, but hope for a future where differences strengthened rather than divided. 6 months after implementing their revolutionary training program, Lieutenant Marcus Fallon and Lieutenant Nytha Val'shara stood before the Alliance High Command. The chamber's holographic displays showed combat statistics that even the most hardened skeptics couldn't ignore. "Combat effectiveness up 47%, Admiral Manson announced, his weathered face betraying a hint of pride. "Casualty rates down 62%. The numbers speak for themselves." Marcus felt Nytha's presence beside him, her armour radiating patterns of triumph and joy. The scar on his chest, the wound that had first proven human resilience to her, tingled with remembered significance. "More than numbers," High Warrior K added, his massive form drawing attention. "The integration of human adaptability with Emerald Blade warrior philosophy has created something unprecedented, something stronger." First speaker. Fallon's crystalline form sparkled as she addressed the assembly. The success of the Nytha Val'shara doctrine has implications beyond military applications. It represents a new understanding between our peoples. After the formal presentation, Marcus and Nytha found themselves in the station's ceremonial garden. The artificial environment perfectly replicated an Earth sunset, casting warm golden light across Nytha's green skin and making her armour shimmer like liquid starlight. "Remember our first mission together?" she asked, her fingers intertwining with his. "When I thought you were too fragile for real combat." Marcus pulled her closer, enjoying how her armour adapted to his touch. "As I recall, you changed your mind pretty quickly after that." "You humans," she laughed, the sound like music, "always surprising us. Your bodies heal, your tactics adapt, but your hearts—" She pressed her hand against his chest, feeling his heartbeat. "Your hearts contain depths we never imagined." Their intimate moment was interrupted by an urgent communication. The Dark Swarm, their old adversaries, had launched a major offensive against an Alliance colony. The newly trained integrated teams were being deployed for their first large-scale operation. In the command centre, Marcus and Nytha watched as their students put their training into practice. Human emerald blade pairs moved with synchronized grace, their different approaches creating perfect harmony in battle. "They're beautiful together," Nia observed, her armour displaying patterns of maternal pride, like a dance. "A rather lethal dance," Marcus quipped, but his eyes shone with equal pride. The battle unfolded like a testament to their teachings. Human regenerative abilities allowed for bold tactical choices, while Emerald Blade, warrior spirit, provided the strength to see them through. The Dark Swarm, expecting traditional alliance tactics, found themselves overwhelmed by this new integrated approach. Victory came swiftly, decisively. As reports flooded in, Admiral Manson approached them. "The Council has made a decision," he announced. "They're establishing a new division, the Integrated Combat Command. They want you both to lead it." The promotion ceremony was held in the Grand Hall of the Emerald Blade Temple aboard the station. Hundreds of warriors, human and alien alike, gathered to witness the historic moment. High Warrior K performed the traditional rites, his armour displaying patterns of ancient significance. "From this day forward," he declared, "you are more than partners, more than warriors. You are the living embodiment of unity through diversity." That evening, in their new quarters overlooking the nebula, Marcus and Nytha celebrated privately. Her armour created intricate patterns of love and desire as they came together, their bond deeper than ever. "I have a confession," Nytha murmured later, tracing the familiar scar on his chest. "That day in the medical ward, when I first saw you healing, I wasn't just shocked, I was enchanted." Marcus smiled, running his fingers through her dark hair. "And I was captivated by the warrior who cared enough to stay by my side." "We've changed so much since then," she reflected, her armour creating ripples of contemplation. "Both of us. The Alliance, everything." "Change is good," Marcus replied, pulling her closer. "It's how we grow, how we heal, how we love." Their kiss was tender, a perfect blend of human passion and warrior devotion. Through their strengthened bond, they shared not just sensation, but understanding of each other, of their different cultures, of the future they were building together. The next morning brought new challenges, new opportunities. The Integrated Combat Command facility was already under construction, designed to accommodate various species and teaching methods. "Commander Fallon," Nytha teased as they reviewed the plans. "It has a nice ring to it." "As does Commander Val'shara," Marcus returned, admiring how her armour created patterns of anticipation, "though I prefer just calling you Love." Their students, now instructors themselves, sparred throughout the day, each pair a testament to the power of their integrated approach. Humans and Emerald Blade warriors worked together seamlessly, their differences becoming strengths. As they watched the facility come to life, Nytha's armour displayed patterns of contentment. "We've created something lasting," she observed, "something that will continue long after us." "A legacy of unity," Marcus agreed, then grinned. "Though I hope we'll be around to enjoy it for a while yet. Human regeneration has its benefits." That night, as they stood on their private balcony, watching the nebula's colours dance, Marcus held Nytha close. Her armour responded to their shared warmth, creating patterns that matched the stellar display. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "when I first joined the Alliance, I never imagined finding this kind of connection, this kind of love. And I never imagined finding strength in what I thought was fragility," Nytha replied, turning to face him. "You taught me that true power comes in many forms." Their kiss was illuminated by the nebulous light, a perfect symbol of their union, different energies coming together to create something beautiful and new. In the years that followed, their legacy grew. The Fallon-Val'shara doctrine became standard throughout the Alliance, creating bonds between species that transcended mere military cooperation. Their love story became legend. The human who proved his strength through healing, and the warrior who learned that true power comes in many forms. But for Marcus and Nytha, the greatest victory wasn't in the battles won or the doctrines established. It was in the quiet moments between, in the touch of skin against armour, in the understanding that their differences had made them stronger. Together, they had changed the Alliance, but more importantly, they had changed each other. And in that change, they had found something rare and precious, a love that healed, adapted, and endured.